You ever scroll through your feed and think about the people who are just not there? The ones who are total digital ghosts? Well, today we're going to pull back the curtain on the surprising psychology behind their online silence. I mean, think about it for a second. We all know somebody like this, right? Maybe it's a friend, a family member, a coworker. They have an account, you're connected, but their page is just crickets. No updates, no photos, no random thoughts. In a world that's all about sharing, their silence is kind of loud. So what's really going on there?
And let's be honest, this is usually our go-to assumption, isn't it? We see that empty profile and our brain just kind of fills in the blanks. We think, oh, they must be shy, or maybe they're insecure, or even, man, their life must be boring. It's just the default story we tell ourselves.
Yeah, this whole idea of the social media ghost is almost always seen as a negative. In our super connected culture, non-participating can look like you're not confident or like you're withdrawing from the world. But what if that whole interpretation is completely backward?
Because as it turns out, psychology suggests this silence isn't a sign of weakness at all. Actually, it's often a quiet, powerful display of some serious psychological strength. So, what is this power of silence? What are we talking about here? Well, it's not about hiding. It's about having a kind of psychological armor that a lot of us are searching for, a mindset that actually frees you from that constant pressure to perform online.
The whole thing really boils down to this one core concept: intrinsic self-worth. This is when your sense of value, your confidence, your identity, it all comes from the inside. It's like having a foundation made of concrete, one that doesn't need likes, comments, or shares to hold it up. You just know your own worth. No audience required.
So, how does a person even get to that point? Well, it's not magic. It's actually built on three pretty fascinating psychological secrets that really explain the power behind the silence. Let's break them down one by one.
All right, our first secret is called the mirror effect. And this one gets right to the heart of why so many of us feel that urge to post in the first place. Okay, think about this digital mirror idea. For a lot of us, social media is exactly that, a mirror. We post a picture or a thought, and then we immediately check the reflection, the likes, the comments, to tell us that we're funny or smart or that our vacation looked amazing. But people with high intrinsic self-worth, they just don't need to look in that mirror to know who they are.
And here's why that is such a game changer. Their sense of self isn't a roller coaster. It doesn't shoot up when a post does well and crash when it doesn't. Because their identity is stable and they define it themselves, they're free from that exhausting, never-ending job of seeking approval from the digital crowd.
Okay, on to our second secret. This one is less about self-worth and a little more about, well, strategy. It's called impression management. This points to a really deliberate choice. See, every post, every photo, every single comment you leave becomes a piece of data that people use to form an opinion about you. People who stay silent get this on a deep level. By choosing not to share, they're not handing out those puzzle pieces for other people to assemble and judge. They control their own story by simply not publishing it for everyone to read. So try to see their silence not as something passive, but as a really active, strategic decision. It's a power move. It's their way of saying, nope, I'm not playing the game of constant public judgment. In a world where we share everything, their privacy is a form of power. And that brings us to our third and final secret. And man, this one is so incredibly important in the world we live in today. It's called dopamine independence. You know that little buzz you get when you see a notification? That little rush? That's a hit of dopamine, the reward chemical in your brain. Social media is literally designed to get us hooked on those little hits. Well, dopamine independence is when you've unhooked yourself from that system. You've mastered what they call stimulus control, which just means your happiness isn't riding on the unpredictable wave of notifications. Bottom line, their happiness isn't outsourced to their phone. Because they're finding real satisfaction and connection in their actual offline lives, they don't need to chase those little digital highs. And as a result, their emotions are way more stable and self-regulated. So let's put it all side by side because it really highlights the difference. On one hand, you've got the validation-driven mindset. This person needs that digital mirror, they share everything to get feedback, and they're constantly chasing those notification highs. But on the other side, you've got the intrinsically driven person. They have a stable internal self-image, they are super strategic about what, if anything, they make public, and they find their fulfillment from within. Two totally different ways of operating. So what's the big takeaway from all this?
How can we use this different way of looking at things to understand the world, and maybe even ourselves a little better?
Well, you can actually start to spot this quiet power in action all around you. Look for the people who aren't constantly performing for likes. That's the mirror effect. Notice the ones who are purposefully private, who share things very selectively and with intention. That's impression management. And pay attention to the people who seem emotionally balanced, who aren't swayed by all the online drama. That's dopamine independence. They're living these 3 secrets.
So I'll leave you with this final thought. The next time you're scrolling and you come across one of those silent profiles, just pause for a second. Instead of automatically assuming it's about insecurity or fear, ask yourself, could this silence be a sign of something else? Not a sign of absence, but of a powerful, self-assured presence. What story is it really telling?